and welcome to the Make Work Happen podcast. I'm Joel I'm from JumpCloud. I run our product team, a great group of people across the world as we try to build better products. And I've got with me a special guest, Bradley Chambers. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me, Joel. I write for 9 to 5 Mac and I host a podcast called Apple at Work, which is most of my writing and my podcasting is all about how people use the Apple products in the enterprise. So obviously very familiar with JumpCloud. Been a fan of the team for a long time, so glad to be here.
Yeah. And Bradley, you and I have met each other in a variety of different past lives as we've gone through this, especially around the Mac world. It's been good. So it's exciting to see kind of where we are here with IT, especially specifically in the mid market. And we're here today to talk about everybody's hot topic, artificial intelligence, and how this is going to, empower you or maybe do the opposite, right? I mean, there's a lot of things going on. AI is a very, very fast moving space. And it's important. You can't ignore it, right? AI has now become so pervasive in the IT space that you have to have a strategy for understanding it, and in a perfect world, how you can make it, work for you even better. So with that, let's kind of start off. Bradley, how do you see AI as a possible accelerator for IT?
It's a both and it really this reminds me, and I could be wrong. It could be a bad analogy. We'll give us about 10 years. People can tell me if I was wrong. It reminds me a lot of when like cloud email first became
Sure.
somewhat acceptable in the enterprise. I mean, if you remember, Google was probably one of the ones that started this trend, maybe back in 06, as I felt like when they launched Google Apps for your domain, which over the years became various other products. So it is what it is today with Google Workspace. And at the time, going cloud email was the exception. And then over the years, like having on-prem became the exception. And today, I mean, a company JumpCloud size probably if you all are still running your own email server in your own data center, you probably have to have like a staff of 10 to manage that. And today, not to say that's like nobody touches Google Workspace, but it's like once you get it up and running, like the work is, you're automating a lot of it. Like a lot of HR systems, when you create a new employee, over an API, new account gets created and provisioned correctly. Like there's a lot of things that happen automatically. And, the day-to-day work is like, checking the logs and things like that. But there's no one that's like putting hands on the hardware today. And I think like that's what's going to happen with AI. So there used to be people's jobs that were like Exchange admins. That job probably very few people have that job today. I'm sure still some people do, but like that's not a job you see like regular listings for. But what happened was AI, if you think about like technology and stack, so like what used to be like bare metal, we're touching the hardware. Well, like you're not doing that as much today, but no company likely has fewer IT people in 2025 than they did in 2005, 2006. The skill sets change. And just as like if your job was, hey, I'm the guy that like unboxes the new computers at work and I image them. Like that was somebody's job 20 years ago. Unboxing and putting the Gold Master image on, that was like, that was a job. Then you maybe even ship those out. Well, that job probably largely doesn't exist. Zero touch. Those things are drop ship from Apple, for example.
Yep.
And just happens automatically. But again, what happened is like, again, if you never learn new skill sets, like, yeah, you probably did lose your job. But then like, and this is very generalization, but like people that used to do imaging, maybe became device management admins. People that were Exchange admins, they became like AWS and Azure and GCP experts and knowing how that data flows. So the skills evolved, and like there, new automation over here led to opportunity over here. So I'm of the mindset of like it's really, really good for IT. Like I think it increases time to value with a lot of products. When you're like, hey, I'm deploying a new tool, well, like a properly functioning like Copilot and AI integration can help you like get value out of that tool much faster than maybe before. So I do think it's like a massive accelerator on training, which I think is good. I think it's good for IT. It's good for employees. The only downside there, it's like it's sometimes like you want to know why things work. And I think like the best AI tools, and certainly for SaaS and IT people, the best AI tools are the ones that can help automate things, but also keep you in control, like very much that human in the loop, if that all makes sense.
Absolutely. And one of the conversations that we've been having a lot internally at JumpCloud as we start building more and more AI tools and more AI into the product is, when is it appropriate to have that human in the loop? And how can we use this power for good, right? There's a lot of belief, we know, especially with JumpCloud, we have a platform. There's a lot of different pieces to it, and we cover a lot of different customers, right? From very small to very large. And how do we have an AI product and an AI flavor into this that helps each of those customers do their jobs better and easier? 100% with you. The days of having an army of folks in a warehouse just to put on golden images, sadly, maybe not sadly, some people might like that, but there's much fewer of those folks out there than there ever has been. And that's a good thing, right? Let's get people doing much more human, useful jobs instead of just literally, because that job was just plugging in cables and going on through that. So very much, agreed by that. So, and that brings us into a little bit like productivity. Beyond anecdotal evidence, where are you seeing AI deliver real productivity gains, tangible gains for IT? Where do you see this being used more efficiently? How does it make an admin's job easier, but also makes them more efficient? Because to your point, I don't think a lot of IT shops have, or a lot of organizations have smaller IT shops, but in a perfect world, they're getting a lot more productivity out of those IT workers, correct?
Well, I think look at it like I look at it like search, honestly, where the every app that I use like has some sort of like search functionality. Maybe it's searching their help desk, and so like if JumpCloud or any other SaaS app. So if I'm logging in and I'm like, I want to know like where something is, like all of them have like a search functionality. Go in there, search, type it, probably brings me to docs. Like that's awesome. Like I don't, but there's not like, I guess, well, they make tools for this for companies. Like it's not the best example. Like I don't want like a general search prompt to go search all my tools. Like I want to be lasered in on that specific tool. And and I look at that as like that keeps me from opening a ticket to learn how to find something. And I really think the true value in, well, it's very much like in the short term. 10 years from now, it's hard to say. Like I think we often overestimate what we're going to do short term, and then we underestimate like 10 years out. It's like tier one tickets for organizations of all size. This is where I see it being super, super helpful. And even if it's like baked into the ticketing app, and you've seen this in the, organizations have had this where it's like you open a support ticket and you want, open a ticket and then they'll like send you like, hey, do you think it's this one? Think about that, like, massively accelerated. So maybe your support ticket window is like some sort of AI prompt and it's helping you work through your ticket. And then boom, from there, maybe you open and talk to a human. But I do think it's like going to be a massive, kind of just like the tickets that nip at your ankles. I mean, I think anyone in IT knows those kind of tickets. I think it's going to really, really automate that. But again, like, do I think like you're going to have like fewer support people? Probably not, because like, I think about it. I think a lot about the world of telemetry data. Like that data is growing at like a 29% CAGR. Okay. So like, yeah, we're going to infuse AI into the telemetry world massively. That data is growing so fast. Like we don't like, there's a massive skills gap on people who know how to deal with that. And so what you kind of do is you automate the things that are nipping at your ankles, so your team can go focus on those higher level things. And it's the same thing I was talking about with the cloud email. Like we're going to automate here, so we can go work here. And you know what? Eventually we'll automate this and we'll go work here. And it's, for every new solution, you create new problems. So yeah, okay, we got all this new AI stuff. Well, then there's probably going to be jobs that's like helping companies like connect all their stuff and connect all their various services. So there's maybe one LLM for my organization that knows our stuff, knows our HR policies. Like those are the new jobs that will kind of be there. And it begin like, it's going to be those like tier one, those easy things, the things that you should be able to find with a search. That's where AI is going to make the massive difference. And like, I think in the next 12 to 24 months.
Very much agreed. And we're seeing this internally. So we've got, like a lot of other shops, some AI now that we're using to, the technical term is ticket deflection, but it's how can we answer the customer when they're asking us those questions in the chat? If you go into your JumpCloud admin portal and you go down to the bottom left, there's a chat field in there. It's where you can get to some of our agents if you want help, file a support case. You can also, we'll try to help you immediately in there. So we've trained our AI on our K-base articles. We're using it with a lot of feedback from what customers are asking. And what's been really interesting to us is one, customers are telling us because they can respond to the AI and say, thank you very much. You solved my problem. One, we're solving more problems this way without them having to talk to a human. So by the time they do talk to a human, now it's a more meatier problem. It's not just some of the more simple things like, how do I find this or what's the K-base article I need to go look at for this? What really shocked a lot of us is we now have a lot of customers that are using this to help them write scripts, to help them automate a lot of their functionality. And when we started off here, we were kind of expecting this was going to be, hey, I'm trying to do X, but I can't find it, or I've got a problem, or it doesn't seem to be behaving the way I expected. Now they're coming into this with, I'd like to automate this. Please tell me how to use the JumpCloud API. Please write me a script to be able to manipulate, this user data that I have. And that's fantastic because I think, to your earlier point, that's showing how IT admins are upskilling on their own. They're now getting beyond just, hey, I can click some buttons, right? But we're getting into a much different space. And I'm really excited to see that AI helping them get into that space, upskilling, getting into a much more, maturity model around their IT and how they're managing it.
Well, and that example is a great one where you could, even if you, let's say, wrote your own code and you're like, something's not working right. Well, the JumpCloud or whatever tool you're using, Copilot, should be able to help diagnose what's wrong with that code based on what it knows about the API. And again, so not only did maybe we solve tier 1, but maybe then we solve tier 2. And again, we just keep upskilling. And I'm of the mindset, we're not trying to replace humans whatsoever. We're trying to make people work faster and focus on just what humans can work on. So, we've been talking about it on the customer side, like submitting a ticket, but you think about it on the agent side, man, let's say, for example, you got a customer and it can surface ticket data from 2 years ago. Hey, they opened a ticket about this 2 years ago. Here's what we solved. And it can help bring in that more context of maybe things that are separate, all these separate systems. A Copilot can pull it all in and kind of prompt hey, this customer, runs into this at the end of the year. They're trying to run these reports. Just a heads up, this is what solved it last time. That's all really mind blowing stuff that, again, in a couple of years, they'll probably just be old hat, just like the way we search for things. You're well, yeah, of course we can just search and do that. Or sure, we can just automate that with Zapier. We kind of reminded of, I think it was the Louis C.K. bit where he talked about when the internet on an airplane, you're how
Yep.
quickly that became so normal. We should be thankful that we're just hurtling in the air and we land alive. But then we can have internet, and you're seeing I think United was integrating Starlink, so it's gonna be super fast. You're it's just old hat now, and that's fine. It really is what it is, and just so many things even in the Apple world. Again, zero touch and how all that's automated. That was mind blowing for 6 months, and then it was just well, we have that, and we're glad we have it, and it becomes old hat, and you just move on, move faster, and kind of go to the next thing.
Yeah, that is. I am constantly reminded of that. We're 30,000 feet above the earth, hurtling at 600 miles an hour, and we're complaining that we don't have lag-free YouTube, right? How far we've come in such a short period of time for all this. So that brings me to an interesting piece. As we've seen our users, our customers use the AI and interact with it, as we've done AI internally, we've got a number of different projects going on. We've found a lot of things, and we see work patterns and behaviors have shifted dramatically as we've started this up, right? And that has created kind of an internal debate. And I hopefully won't tip my hand too much on where I am on this. But there's a pool of thought saying, we need to go out and build a lot more AI into our own products because people are going to come into the JumpCloud admin portal and going to start using that AI there. Kind of like the agentic AI we have now that we've been talking about earlier. The other school of thought is, are users going to start their day? Because kind of what you've been talking about, you've been scratching at, you go tell AI to do something and it's pulling from a variety of different sources, and you want it to pull from the right source at the right time. But you're seemingly, and we'll see what side of this you come down on, does your day start off with, okay, I'm going to go into JumpCloud, I'm going to add a few new users, and then great. Now I'm going over to Workday and I'm going to touch up some HR integrations or something like that. Now I'm going over to Google Workspace, and now, I'll edit some spreadsheets, do some slides, whatever business people do, right? Or do you start by going to Gemini first and you say, Gemini, hey, I know you've got some integrations with JumpCloud. Why don't you go do some user administration for me? Great. When you're done with that, why don't you use the results of that and maybe touch up some things in Workday? Usually that flows backwards, but whatever. My example, I think, still holds. And then finally, hey, why don't you create a set of slides about what I did today so that when I report up to my management, they know that we've handled the onboarding of all these folks, right? So where's the entry point going to be? Are you going to enter in through AI, or are you going to enter in through a product that then goes into AI?
I think it depends. My opinion. So there's like a couple schools of thought here. Like, do I think that Google would love for that to be the thing? Yeah, I do think they would love to do that. Now, the risk for me for a company like JumpCloud or Workday is, okay, if you disengage like the problems that JumpCloud solves and the way it solves it, and the people at the company, they're really good, they're really helpful. It's like they understand my business. And if you just say, well, we're going to like basically be an API only, and we're going to let Google in there, I think it hurts the relationship of knowing kind of how your customers use the product and like what their needs are, because then it's basically JumpCloud can only build like what Google Gemini can do. So it kind of takes a little bit of the power and the product roadmap away from JumpCloud and takes that user relationship. And frankly, then it's like Google can just start like, well, they're using JumpCloud for that. We'll just build the base in there on that. Or 90% of the people use this, so we're going to build just that piece. I don't want to live in a world where it's like one prompt for all my tools. I personally don't, because I don't think that one tool is going to be able to know like the ins and outs of all those. No, I'm a big fan of like automations on the back end. Like I'm a big fan of, create somebody in Workday, then it's auto-populated all these places. That's all great. I just don't want to, like, it's just like where I would not want only interaction with Workspace to be in Workday. And like, it's like, well, Workspace can't do anything that Workday doesn't allow, because that creates like, we're then, who's the customer then? Who's the customer of Google Workspace? Is it the user? Is it Workday? And that I think that's tough for the customer, and that's not necessarily somewhere the customer ends up being what's like, because then Google has their priorities, and the may not align what the customer needs for, say, what JumpCloud offers. So I still think these different tools can be connected and automated, but just in a way that doesn't take the relationship away from like the customer and the vendor.
Very much agreed. And that's, I wouldn't say this is an existential crisis, but I think it's something that a lot of SaaS companies are going to be thinking about more in the future, right? On the one hand, if we didn't have to write a UI, we've got some amazing UX people at JumpCloud, but if we didn't have to put a UX around a lot of these things, then we could deliver features faster. Because if you're only doing it in a purely API-based form, but then, like you said, what are you missing? There's context around that. Gemini is never going to have a dashboard that shows you what all your devices are looking like. Maybe it can make some really pretty markdown in the agentic interface, because I've seen it even getting better with charts and graphs that it's putting in there. It's pretty incredible. But hopefully we've got a much deeper understanding of what we're doing. However, there's no doubt that we've got to create better integration, like what you're talking about with Workday and some of those, what we put under orchestration, right? Tines, N8N, I don't even know how to pronounce that. I guess it's N8N, are some amazing workflow tools that are out there, heavily leveraging AI and heavily leveraging a lot of these API access pieces to be able to kind of pull the strings on some of these other tools. And for us to be a viable product, we want to offer this to customers. We want to have those APIs and those interfaces in there. And naturally, that's going to get us into the place where Gemini is going to have access to that same thing anyway. Because we can't open it up to the workflow apps, but not open it up to Gemini. And I think, the natural order is as you're right, Google's going to love having more hooks into more things, or to be your central point. I don't know that I hate that. As a user, I have a variety of things that I've got to go click into and got to do stuff. Having a centralized interface where it all kind of looks the same, and there's some advantages to that. Either way, I think that's still a little bit over the horizon as we go forward. What we're thinking a lot about now, though, regardless of whether it's all done in one place, you're going to various different services, we know that there's more integration between SaaS applications because of AI to be able to do this. And that's where I think we get into really interesting security aspects of this, right? This is a whole different world in security. We've had non-human identities before, and we've had API keys and ways to be able to share information that way. But now we're getting into users. How do we differentiate between a user and admin? Whether admins still stay in the SaaS applications or not, users aren't, right? Our users have a user portal on the JumpCloud side, which is great, but they're going to be spending a lot more of their day in a Gemini portal doing their work, in a Copilot, whatever else that they're using. So that security aspect of AI has become really interesting. And how do we create new security flows? What are the new security problems that we have to answer as we're dealing with AI, especially with these requests coming in from a wide variety of services?
Yeah, again, I go back to human in the loop, and I think in the short term, what I could see more of is like read-only access. So maybe Gemini gets read-only access to all these tools, but like you think about some of your, some of your security tools, like where that data, you've got to have it. It's got to be logged properly. You have to, for compliance, archive it in a certain way. Are you comfortable letting another company's AI tool go make changes to that? And some people might, and again, like properly built APIs, that's, can be done to be interesting, but like there is just still a hesitation on letting things run loose. As you said, we've had API keys and we've had like automation, but like it sort of feels like there was like very specific guardrails, like, hey, you can do this and that's it. And if you open that, it's like, just do anything. It's like, I don't know. I'm not there yet. And I don't think, because ultimately at some point you should be human interaction here. There should still be oversight. Again, it's going to be a upskilling. It's going to be a lot of natural language input. Like, again, let's say my sim environment and I'm trying to look at security analysis. Like, do I want to do that in Google Gemini, or it could be any, AI prompt, or do I want to do that specifically like in my sim tool? Like if I'm using, CrowdStrike, does CrowdStrike have the best AI prompt? Like I feel like they're going to have a better indication of like what I want to see and how I want to visualize it, because they're in that business, where I don't know that a generic AI prompt is going to be good about doing that. Again, some automating dashboards, that's all really, really, that sounds awesome. But like when it comes down to it, like brass tacks, like that specific tool solves specific problems for my organization, I want to go use that tool because they understand my needs. And I think that's like the more specialized some of this get, that's going to become more apparent. Just as like, yeah, if I just like want to review a blog post, or I want to basic code, just help me understand that. I just don't see a world where like generic LLM tools like are going to be good enough about that for specific needs for IT and security teams. I could be wrong, but that's my opinion I'm sticking with for now.
Fair. And as we said earlier, I mean, this is a fast moving space, and it's been just amazing how often you've had to change your whole worldview about what's going to be possible with this, right? I remember going back 2 or 3 years ago when some of the first initial AI generated images, where we all kind of laughed, right? They've got 9 fingers. It's easy to know. And now you look at that and it just blows you away at how realistic they've been. On the security side, something that we've been thinking about a lot, and I'm not necessarily expecting an opinion because it's still pretty new, and this is not a forward-looking statement for us, but we have been diving into like, what is zero trust in the world of AI, right? We've done a lot of device posture, the posture checking, manage devices, put a lot of policies down. And we've gotten a lot of IT organizations into the concept, which I think is really great, that there's some resources that can be accessed from anything. grandma's iMac when you're at home on Christmas vacation, right? But there's other things that you have to have from a managed device that has various security controls in place, an EDR tool, possibly CrowdStrike, something like that you've got on there. And now when you're shifting your identity into that AI, when you're going and you're chatting with Gemini and Gemini starts making calls for you, there still may be a human in the loop, but it's Gemini that's saying, hey, friend, can you go sign into Salesforce for me? Because I want to pull these reports so that you don't have to bother doing them. I'll create the whole, Q1, pipeline deck for you. That provides a really interesting space. I mean, interesting from a technology perspective. How do I shift that device trust? How do I shift that zero trust mentality when the call is coming in from Gemini and it's not going through the device that we have all the knowledge about?
Yeah, no, again, that's a perfect example. Like, you think about like, you've got KPIs. So like if your product team, you're like, okay, I don't know how you're managing, let's say you're using Jira. You're like, the amount of work, if you're going and having like a quarterly business report to the leadership, it's like, hey, here's what the product team's done. Like you've got days and days and days of work to go compile all those tickets and like, okay, where are we at on these? Like where's the roadmap at? That's the kind of stuff where like that should, like a lot of that's going to be quickly automated. And in a way that's not like doing Joel's job, but this is actually keeping Joel or it's allowing him to spend more time doing his job, if that makes sense. Like it's like
the fun parts of my job.
Well, and the parts that you're good at. And again, it goes back to, I look at it's like having a really, really good assistant. And, and there have been things, if I'm like writing copy, and it's like I've written the copy, maybe AI helped me get some of the foundation. I go in there and put it in my words and I tweak it. And it's like, hey, one final check. Is there anything technically wrong here? Again, goes back. I do think that's pretty good. It's like you think about the number of, JIRAs you've had to work through, like, okay, where are we at on these? And then you got to report on them. Really, should be like click a button, generate 10 slides based on what the product team has done this quarter. Boom, review slides are done. I'm ready to present. You can go back and do your job. Otherwise, that's like probably a week's getting ready for those reports. Like it's probably a multiple days job, and so it's taking you out of the loop here. And again, so again, goes back to that. Maybe Google Gemini can do that. Can do read only access. It's about letting you spend more times doing the things that humans can do or do best. And I think every technology advancement I look at over the last 20 years, it kind of lines up with that. Is like, okay, how do we let humans, how do we, and again, I guess my advice to be, if you're in IT, if your job is like moving from here to there digitally, you're going to be automated. Just as like if your job 20 years ago was like unboxing things. So look at what you do. Like, what about your job requires humans? And if it doesn't, again, not saying that like, use AI in engineering, but like, I don't trust engineering to like write code for JumpCloud and like handle all this. Like you need humans in the loop.
Yep.
And so if your job is just like, hey, my job is moving this from that. So if like your job is, hey, I compile I build the slides for Joel for all of his meetings. Like that's just something that's going to be automated. And so you don't need somebody from that. It's not replacing Joel, but it's replacing the person that like lets Joel work more.
Yep. And hopefully the exciting part of your job wasn't plugging in USB-C cables into a device, but it was, getting something out there, helping users, that kind of thing. And ideally we can accelerate that more. So yeah, very, very much agreed with that. And so far, like we're using things internally. We're not alone in this, but I think this is a great space where Copilot can do a first run at some of the PRs. When you're doing a PR review for new code that's coming in. And that way you don't have to have as many humans, because most devs don't like looking over other people's codes. And the people who do like looking over people's codes are maybe not the devs you want to be working with. So what can we do to take out the drudgery, but still then highlight and float up the things where we really want a human to be a part of?
Do you, that's something I thought about, and I would be interested to hear your opinion. And so like web development is a good example here. Like, I remember like, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, everything was done by hand. I mean, it was all automated. Well, then over the year, this is probably going eye roll, but like Microsoft front page came around. Like, oh, anybody can make websites. Well, that was a good thing. They were not good websites, but like that was a good thing. And then over the years, like new tools came out, like the Squarespaces and the Wixes, and like there's a lot of really like anybody can build a website today. So I would say there are probably less people alive today that know how to write custom web code than there were 20 years ago. Is that bad? Like, are we like losing a skill? Like, it's sort of like you've seen the meme. I think it was like the Pizza Hut or the Wendy's from like the 90s. And it was like the meme was like, "Hey Dad, why don't we build Wendy's like this?" It's like we forgot how to build a Wendy's like this. Like we don't know how anymore. And so it's kind of like that for like say web development where you're like people, I mean, it's a good thing that like a Squarespace and a Wix and a Webflow, they all exist and you can build incredible websites. So probably like it's a good thing that the industry moved away from like everything being done in Notepad. But is it a bad thing long term because fewer people know how to do those low level skills? So when things break, I don't know.
So let me flip this around on you. Great question, right? This is the buggy whip question, right? The buggy whip industry is gone because cars came out, right? I started my life, my degrees in journalism. I was a photographer. I chased Monica Lewinsky and did paparazzi things for a couple of years, and that was all in film. And I used to spend a lot of time developing film, T-shirts stained with fixer and everything else on there. Your hands would smell for a long time, and you felt though that you had this like very tactile attachment to the art that you were building. It was really cool. Digital cameras came out, and 100% they made the job certainly of news photography much easier. You were able to take more pictures. They also democratized it, which was a very interesting thing. You now had, and that's what you have today, right? If you look at the news, there's a lot of film, a lot of pictures taken on smartphone cameras. And the concept of a collection of professional journalists, professional videographers, professional photographers is kind of gone. They're still there, but it's a much different profession and a much different job than it ever used to be. My hope is, I mean, AI isn't, this cycle has started and completed a million times in the history of civilization, right? AI is not unique in that. And so you've got to be dealing with these trends and these changes regardless of what the technology is that's made it. It just so happens that today AI has been so pervasive across so many jobs in so many categories at the same time that I think we're really getting hit right across the eyes with it.
Well, and you and I are, I think look like about the same age. Like we kind of grew up with the world where a lot of technology was like still hard to use. And like my first job was was in tech support, working for a local ISP, and this was like pre-Service Pack 2. So these were like brutal days to be in tech support, and just like the viruses and all that. And then I think about like my kids; they've grown up with like iPads and Macs and technology that was like way more stable and way easier to use. They also don't have the troubleshooting skills that I have, and things don't always work right. And again, it's like your cars, that's a great example. Okay. Our cars were more reliable today than they were like 30 years ago. I mean, for the most part, yes. Like I argue like some of the things we've automated are annoying. So like when I had my electric starter go out of my truck like a year ago, and it was like $1,000 to replace. And you're like, what never broke? The key never broke, just like stuff like that. It's so, yeah, cars are somewhat more reliable, but what's also harder to repair today? Cars. What's also
Absolutely.
like, and it's the same thing. Like you look at like, I mean, I used to have like my Mac hardware certification. I used to repair Macs, and like I would hard drive goes dead. Like I can get one off Amazon for $40, clone it, boom, pop it in, and it's back up and running. And like I have that skill set. You buy a Mac today, it's functionally not repairable. No, it's not that it's not repairable, it's just not cost effective. But on the flip side, I bet you a lot less, other than accidental damage, there's a lot less Macs that need to go in for repair. So it's that conundrum of like the repairability, the put the hands on the keyboard, the fixing, yeah, through not even AI, just through like supply chain and improvements and hardware improvements. It's harder to fix, but also doesn't have to be fixed as often. Same thing for the appliances in my house. Like an appliance 30 years ago, you could repair anything. Well, once today, like you kind of can't, but I would also argue maybe they have fewer issues. Like I don't, that's the conundrum. And so like, is it going to be bad that we're having like a whole generation of upcoming IT practitioners that are coming into the world and like, oh, you've got AI built into all your tools. Like you're never going to do this stuff manually. Sure. But you know what though? The people that were like, doing stuff with technology in the 80s would probably look at the stuff I was doing in the 90s and say in the early 2000s, say the same thing to me. So like, is this just like the old man yells at cloud? It's probably a little bit of both. But the only thing is, like, I do think there's something for being able to like have those troubleshooting skills, and maybe that's the hardest thing. But it's probably it's we probably just moved past a world where like I don't have to like figure out how to like edit the registry on a Windows PC because it really shouldn't have to be done. Like it should just work, and it's like that's the kind of stuff we've moved past. Yeah, maybe kids won't know how to go in and fix the registry for like tier one help desk. They won't know how to like remote in and fix that stuff in the registry editor. But it's actually a good thing if they never had to do that. And so that's probably where it's at. So
but understanding the logic of a split half search, even if it's not because you're looking for the one extension in System 7 Mac Finder that was breaking.
Right.
The concept of that, I think you're right. I think understanding troubleshooting, and frankly, there's going to be troubleshooting with AI, right? There's going to be like, okay, why did you suddenly take this hallucination? What was in the prompt that changed that? Why did you decide to use this tool instead of this other MCP instead? So I think that's a valuable skill. And I think that's maybe getting us to a good place as we can kind of wrap this up. What are the skills? Like, what are the things that are always going to be valid and how are they essential in this new IT world? Like when you sit down a new baby IT person, like, do you talk to them about a split half search and how do you instill some of that? Like there's got to be fundamental truths, whether it was us, our parents, our kids, that should still stay with this in the IT world, right?
I think you just kind of nailed it. I always think like with IT, it's like go where the problems are and go where the security threats are. One of the biggest risks I see with this world where like AI is the OS for your organization. So let's say JumpCloud has JumpCloud OS, and this is sort of our custom LLM thing that powers all of our tools and they talk awesome. Man, if I can inject some code into that, some rogue code, I can break a lot of stuff real quickly. And so being able, like maybe the people today, they're going to be displaced by AI, the tier one support. Maybe they need to become almost like LLM log experts and can spot anomalies in these logs. And so that's the kind of really the skill set I think is going to be very valuable is maybe, I'm not, even if I'm not like an LLM, I'm not an AI programmer, I'm not building these tools, but the full understanding of how they work and being able to look at the logs and all the telemetry they create and spot anomalies through there is I think is going to be a massive opportunity because again, that's, if you build new things, that's where the hackers go. And if you can poison the LLM model, you can break a lot of things that are maybe not easy to understand. Like again, you talking about like agentic AI, you attach a rogue thing, things starts crawling around the network really quick, and maybe you don't even know because again, we come in this world like everything's open, APIs, everything can talk, and that's great, automation. Well, if you put a bug along, a malicious bug along that route, starts learning a lot about your organization. And so that's the skill set. Again, if you're listening to this, you're like, okay, I want to make sure like I'm not displaced in 10 years. Think about like where the problems are as like new solutions come out. What problems do those solutions cause? Because sometimes that often is the thing. It's like two steps forward, one step back, and you solve these two problems, but you created another one. And so how do we solve that?
As you talk, I'm struck by something that I've always held near and dear to my heart. I think I've inherently done it, and the people that inherently do this usually do better in more changing environments, which is the concept of some intellectual curiosity, right? When you're working on that Mac, Power Mac 7200, the bleeder case, I remember that one. When you're doing that, if you're intellectually curious about, okay, what's next? How is this going to work? How does this piece fit into the next thing? What you're talking about here, I've put a lot of my life into this agentic AI. It's doing a lot of things for me. It's fantastic. But hey, how could this go wrong? Where's the next step? Where's the problem going to start? That intellectual curiosity keeps you excited, keeps you interested. And that's where you can keep your career, your personal goals, all of those things going, I think, in a very good direction where you're going to be set up well for success, no matter what happens with AI.
Well, I mean, I look at even your career, like, and I think you had a passion for identity management a long time ago. And I was on podcast in 2010 saying like identity is the future of everything in the enterprise. I should have just gone and built. I clearly just like I knew the problem. I should have just maybe like
You shouldn't have talked about it. You should have done it.
I should have just done it, because it's like entire industries, like that whole industry was like built, and like I sat there and watched it because I knew that was a problem. And that's you had an underpinning of a lot of your career, and you're I would argue famous in the technology world for some of the things you built and some of the vision you had, because that was a problem. Like that was something that organizations as like apps and SaaS services on that's like, yeah, this is like a huge problem. It was like, okay, so we built all these cool new tools. Well, now we got a problem with identity. And like we need to figure out a way to automate and manage, help companies manage that. And the industry was built, and those problems are like for the most part solved. Like there's just like things about technology today, like a work Mac can like, I always think it was Pixfly, but like you can have like customized Mac OS login screens. I never thought that would even be possible in Apple, but like they, all those things are like automated now, and it's like works really well. And occasionally you have problems, but like, we built these things over here, built all these cool new tools. Well, then we had a problem that we needed to like unify them with a cool identity solution. So then we did that, build all those tools. Well, then there's like other things that are breaking because of that, and there's like new things you got to go, problems you got to solve. And so I think it's all going to be that way. It's like, again, look at what's being built and what problems are being created from what's being built. That's simple advice from me.
Very much agreed. And, even in this new AI world, identity is still a huge part of it, right? The identity issues haven't gone away. AI hasn't made identity maybe easier in some places, but it's actually created more questions and more issues about where your identity is. So absolutely. So this has been fascinating. This has been a great conversation. I love catching up with you. We don't do it often enough. So very excited to have you on here as we talk about this. So in wrapping up, what's your one message? What is it that you can, deliver about the transformative potential of AI? How do you build IT? How can we wrap up the last 30, 40 minutes that we've been talking?
Well, I think it's stay curious.
Ted Lasso quote.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I've always been told I kind of look like him. You just in technology, like you kind of can't you can't rest on your laurels. I mean, again, like I've been out of college like 20 something years now. Like nothing I work on was invented when I went to college. And you just have to like stay curious, like ask questions. You just can't be like, you're not going to have a job in technology where you start the job when you're like 22 doing that and you do that until you're 60. Like that's not going to work. That's there's nobody in technology who's ever had that, because it advances too quickly. And I would even argue like the people that, I went to work at the plant when I was 20 and I retired there at 65 and I worked at the same job. Yeah, you probably did, but like the jobs changed over the years, and like you used to, maybe you were doing that, and like then you became like, they automated that part of the manufacturing line, but your job actually became fixing the machines. And it's like, then that's the kind of stuff happens. It's like, so again, stay curious, keep learning new skills. I'm not saying like go sign up for like a Coursera class. I'm just like, read blogs from companies that you find interesting. Like, what are they building? How are they using? Like, you can learn so much for free online. Like, it's really, really incredible. And just stay humble, stay curious, and look at think about your job and say, what of my job might be automated in the next 5 to 10 years? And like, awesome, it might be. So what skills are you going to pick up along the way? And I always say this to organizations, that's where you raise your hand. New project coming along, hey, I'll learn about that. Like, be willing, like, let me take that on. I've never used that. I've never used that tool, or I've never done that, but raise your hand and be willing to learn, because that's the kind of, staying humble, staying curious, and just keep learning is the best advice I can give you, because I don't know what the next 10 years will bring, but also in like 2015 could not have predicted 2015. You just don't know. Like, again, the jobs that IT people had in 2010, they've changed in so much in the last 15 years, and I don't see that slowing down. So just keep learning.
Yeah. No, evergreen sage advice. 100% agree with that. The only piece I'd add, AI allows you to stay even more curious. You brought up HTML, and this is my own journey in the last couple of days, last couple of weeks. Been doing some more with Cursor, some side projects, doing proof of concepts where I'm building them out with AI now. I was awful at HTML, still in. It's never lit up my brain. And I was always, I wouldn't say held back, that's too strong of a word. But when I would do proof of concepts and things like that, I couldn't put a nice interface on it because I just wasn't that good at it. Now that I've got AI helping me out, they're not production ready, they're not professional, but they're good enough. And it's allowed me to actually do a lot more work a lot faster because of that. And I've been able to follow some of my curiosity into some other spaces. So very, very, very poignant, and I think good information. Hopefully people use AI in that way for good instead of evil, and to allow them to accelerate.
Well, and I think it's a great wrap up, because you think about like the music industry. I asked someone a question recently, and we're talking about like, American Idol used to be the way you got discovered, like
Yeah.
on like if you're like a new artist. And well, like now it's like, you know what? Like if I was a good musician, I can just literally have my phone's camera here with a guitar, and I can go viral on TikTok and get a record label. Like it's not like AI is not making me a good musician, but it's also if I was a musician, it would eliminate the gatekeeper. Like there are no artificial gatekeepers. So if again, it's a good example. If you're like, I have this really good idea for an app or a service, and gosh, I am not a designer. You're not going to get the design that's going to like you're going to go IPO with, but man, you can probably get some basic stuff done and like get a vision out there with AI tools. And again, that's just the AI tools today. So maybe in 10 years, you literally could take the whole, you could run the whole company that way. It'd be 3-person company where maybe it used to be 30. That's the kind of stuff. It's kind of eliminated those like artificial barriers of like, it gets you that foundational level stuff. Again, like you said, or maybe you're a really good designer and you need some help doing some basic coding. Awesome. You're probably not going to like launch a massive web services, that has tens of millions of users on it with that code. They can at least give you kind of that proof of concept.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. Everybody should go out, start that next unicorn, right? We keep hearing there's a unicorn, $1 billion valuation coming with one person because they built it out of AI. And I think we're in a place where we have that. Thank you very much for showing up on the Make Work Happen podcast that we've got here. Always a pleasure chatting with you, Bradley. Really good insights, and really excited to see where we're going forward here. I think AI, you've got to treat it as a brave, great new world, because otherwise it's going to hit you like a truck and you're going to get left behind anyway. But I think there's some fascinating things here.
Well, again, look at what companies are out there and what problems are out there. Every industry goes through this. This is history, doesn't repeat itself, but it very much rhymes. And for every new solution, the cool new solution today, it's creating 3 other problems, and those go build a company to solve those problems.
With that, thank you very much again. Thank you.